And to not only hear a pioneer in the field, but one who knows the subject from both sides of the coin. He's a former Air Force intelligence officer, as well as writer of the historically interesting, where did I put it? Yes, here it is. In this book here are all of his publications that were the first of their kind, Orbit and Crickle. They're all bound in this book. And these are really history today. Not only that, he also wrote 30 Blue, which I can't hold up because it's in the car, and the new hardback book, Situation Red, which was beautifully covered by our own Carol Kovacs last year. And in Dayton on the 29th of July, this author will release the most exciting, true UFO story yet told. But right now, please join me in welcoming my very good friend, Mr. Leonard H. Stringfield.
Well, as you all know, I'm guilty of this with the alarming title. I'm not alarmist. I selected Situation Red on purposely because I thought the situation was just that. And the reason I say that summarily is because as long as people worldwide are having close encounters and in many instances frightened to death by that encounter, I believe that the situation is red. And I also believe that the military knows it. So being guilty of that, I'm also guilty of something else. And I feel rather horrible. I must apologize taking you away from your TV sets tonight for watching Project UFO. In these little episodes, we learn of all the glories of the Blue Book and how nice they were with all the people that they interviewed in the cases. And afraid I have to differ with the approach as illustrated in the TV series. They weren't always quite that diplomatic about handling affairs during their interrogations, pursuit of the UFO, handling of the subject with the public, and their rather inglorious demise in the Condon Project. I was fortunate or unfortunate to have worked with the Condon Project as a field investigator for the tri-state area. I knew some of the inner workings of the Condon group, and I cannot say that I worked with them with any degree of pride, but I did learn something. And all the past experiences, whatever they may have been, including my working with the Air Force back for 3 years in the early 50s, operating under code name Foxtrot Kilo 30 Blue, where I was asked to report to the Air Defense Command, Columbus, Ohio, all UFO activity in our area that I considered worth reporting. In other words, what I sent them was based on my screening, my knowledge at the time of what a real UFO might be. And I must say that as a result of the number of calls I've made to them within those 3 years, that there were occasions when the jets were sent up to scramble in pursuit of the UFO. At that point, I was told, not in writing, but by an Air Force officer, that I was never to ask any questions. Of course, at that time, and of course since, I realized that what they had learned from the pursuit was maintained under heavy classification, usually secret. So I had, through the many, many years, many ups and downs, all sorts of experience with the UFO situation. So with all that information, I guess that's what really prompted me to put it down in sort of a memory bank and Situation Red. Tonight, I actually, a couple days ago, knowing that I would be here and talking for a research group, I wondered just what would I relate to those of you who knew the subject. I knew I couldn't buffalo you, and so I might be speaking to a Sunday school group. You could tell them almost anything and they'd believe you. And I realized here I can't fool you, so I have to be very careful what I say. But I have something to say. And the reason for this is a paper that I have prepared and working on for several months, very diligently. It's entitled Retrievals of the Third Kind. and it concerns, in my belief, the hardware the officials, the Air Force, has been hiding from the public for many, many years, and that would also include the occupants. I dared publish some of this in my book, some basic knowledge that I had. At that time, I could not prove what I was relating, but I thought it sounded pretty good because it came from reliable sources. Of course, when the book was published by Doubleday and it got out on a national basis, why additional information started to sneak my way from various sources that had treated the information they had letter sub rosa for years, and very carefully was related to me, which perked up my ears. I became concerned. I thought, well, here's a subject that has been taboo in research from practically its inception, thanks to a book written by Frank Scully, Behind the Flying Saucers, back in 1950. It is now my belief that the book was a contrived book put there on purpose to reduce or subdue the interest of researchers such as myself in those early years, referring to anyone who would dare bring up this type of thing in serious research would be laughed right out of the business, because it was generally referred to as the little green man and so forth and so on. In other words, an atmosphere was created by certain authorities to keep the subject played down, and they were, we all know, very, very successful. Until Stringfield decided to do something else a few months ago, and it opened up a whole new can of worms. So what I've done, talk I had prepared to relate to you this evening, I tore the whole thing up yesterday. I said there's no use of trying to address an elite group such as you with more UFO sightings, nocturnal lights, close encounters. After all, they've all been published, retold. We're all quite aware of those. We all know who's who in research. We all know what the research groups are doing, good or bad. We've heard all the theories. So why should I get up here and waste your time tonight with the twice-told tales? There are at least 2,000 books on the market, and they'll all say the same thing. At this point, I'm going to get right to the point. I have no trim, no fat, pardon the expression, no crap. I think it's time for truth, and when I read my 53-page report, again entitled Retrievals of the Third Kind, I think perhaps you'll realize what I'm trying to relate. I think the data that I have within 17 abstracts in my paper from information I gathered from what I consider to be very reliable sources should open the eyeballs of somebody. If the mass media is there attending, and they've all been invited, they know the subject, title of the subject. If they're there to truly be objective, they will listen to me and report it accordingly. It'll be a good test. So what I'm about to relate, it's a very, very, believe me, very sensitive subject. Now, I'll warn you, tonight when I speak with some of these matters in this subject, I can only tease you, because I cannot reveal at this time the contents of my paper, which will be revealed on July 29th in Dayton. As you'll probably all know, the MUFON Symposium is an annual affair, and each year a city is picked. And this year, propitiously, it's Dayton, right next to Wright-Patterson Field. And that is the sensitive area, indeed. I gave it some thought before I actually started to work on this self-assignment. I knew it was sensitive. I knew I had certain bits of information in mind to use. And in time, other parts and pieces of this type of information reached me, which encouraged me. I came to a point, really, should I do it or not? I knew that it could either be, in the end, glorified, sanctified, or vilified when I was through, or canonized, perhaps. I decided that I'd gone this far in my life, having had my own experience with UFOs and a plane that almost crashed as a result of them, UFO, I lived through that. I lived through 28 years of ups and downs and research, and those of you who have been in that long or even less know what it can do to you. And I've held up under that, although my wife might disagree. But anyway, I survived it all. And I thought, well, let's tackle the big one. Here's my swan song. Here's my big challenge. To really go into this all the way. And I did. I pushed everything else aside to concentrate on this one endeavor, to collect as much good, solid information as possible from the best sources, to make the paper as solid as possible to present for the world public. Certain bits of information came to me in very surprising ways. People following a talk would come up and say, I have something to talk to you about, and everybody goes away. I had one excellent case in this regard, a man who had seen the retrieved occupants firsthand, and he described them to me in the circumstances before. And this I thought was just a little strange, because it came from a pilot who had been in the military and had top security clearance. And when I got this little information, I decided that this was the turning point that I would pursue it. And I really did. Everything to me that had been at one time a rumor or something, fifth, sixth, eighth hand, I went after it. It took a lot of doing, very careful, cautious, persistent work. And in fact, it became a 24-hour daily job to pursue many of these loose ends. But I did it. And a long story short, by January, February this year, I'd come up with an amazing amount of material. New material that had never been known to most researchers before. When you get into a sensitive area like this, if you get by the one person, sometimes they can relate you to another person who may be way over in Timbuktu, but you can eventually get to them. Again, being always cautious, diplomatic, and all the other virtues that goes with getting information. So by April 5th or 6th, I had completed my papers. And I took a good, long second look at everything, wondered, should I really do this? And I said, well, I got it finished. There's all the works. Why not? So I informed Walt Andrus, director of Ufology, that I had come this far, the paper is ready. I marked at the top, confidential, in red, and asked Walt not to reveal the contents of this paper to no one, even the typist and the printer. That's a joke. They got to see it. But anyway, I had laid some careful groundwork. I retained a copy at home, the original copy. I turned a copy over to another person unknown to anyone, in case something should happen to me, or my paper, perhaps it could be purloined. And so I made a lot of groundwork, a lot of little preparations, which I won't go into right now in case something happened. Then some rather amazing things happened. And I guess in this particular area I have to tease you because I can't really tell you what happened. I feel a little abashed by that, but that's the way it is. I can say this, that it is an extremely sensitive area that I picked on. And of course, the subject, as I had mentioned before, retrievals of the third kind includes the retrievals of the craft, UFO, and the occupants. I have, at this point, I can say, much data on the retrieved discs. Now, there's more than one. We've always heard of the famous one back in New Mexico, the Aztec affair, and perhaps another one in the West, or two or three. Perhaps all of you have heard these in the form of rumors. Well, I have 17 sources of information concerning a number of crashes throughout the United States, exclusive of those overseas that I'm aware of. These will be presented in my talk in Dayton. And then since then, I've added 8 more sources, which will not be in the paper. Some of these sources will be used in the form of addenda. 2 of them are so super sensitive, I'm not quite sure at this time if I can use them. I'll do it 100%. Then there's another source, under no circumstances can I reveal. It all sums up to this, the information I have right now. Surely as I'm standing here, I guess I'm standing, but I know this, the real UFO, at least one kind, does absolutely exist, incontrovertibly exist. And also I'll say that incontrovertibly we have them. We've had them in military custody since 1947. That's one retrieval I'm aware of. No occupants. 1948, with occupants. 1952, 1953, 1957, 1962, 1973, and 1977. We have retrieved craft with occupants. And there are more. Much of this dating, I reiterate, will be revealed in 17 abstracts of paper. Possibility of using 2, 3, perhaps 4 more. And again, I'll say that other information I have, I don't think I'll be able to reveal it because it deals with material referred to as crypto.
What do you mean by that?
That's sub rosa, super secret, above top secret. And I've touched the outside of the circle of information. I don't think I've said too much. I plan to say this much. And I don't know, it seems to me that it'd be futile to go into, at this time with that information, to go into a whole lot of sightings, close encounters, live encounters. This too will be presented by Ted Glosher, who has collected over 1,800 close encounter cases in his catalog, live encounters. This in itself is extremely interesting. Of course, we'll be very fortunate to have Ted Glosher at the UFON meeting to relate on that subject. In fact, the whole meeting should be interesting. We have Dr. Heineck there, who will again tell us if they're from another realm. And we have Major Kehoe will be there to, I'm sure, to relate his feelings about the Air Force. And then Dick Hall, who is a very well-informed researcher and a good historian in the subject, will be there to relate certain data, as I understand it, during the significant year of 1967, and of course the title of my subject. So it should be a very interesting meeting. I talked to Dr. Heineck about a week and a half ago before he took off for a short vacation in Italy. And he was extremely interested in the title of my paper. I told him I was not in a position to relate information, especially over the telephone, to him. And he seemed really very interested. And we can, of course, realize why a man at his position as a doctor in astronomy and so forth could not touch on the same subject that I selected because of his scientific position and the fact that he had been top scientific consultant to the Air Force for 20 years. If he were to get up and daringly say the same thing that I planned, well, it would put him in a better jeopardous position. So I can appreciate somebody at this stage is not being able to talk as freely as I have chosen to do. But I decided, as I've told several colleagues here this evening, I'm going up there on that stage and present my case, even if I have to crawl up there. I plan to go through it. Another announcement, again sort of a tease, but I have one source outside of Ohio who has what I consider a major document, and he is well aware of what I'm doing. In fact, he was the informant in one of my very important incidents, who hopes, unless he's interfered with it, to present this document in support of my claims. If this paper, plus what I plan to reveal, all works out as we see it as of right now. It should become a major bit of news to the whole world. Certainly provocative, certainly sobering. We use all sorts of adjectives. I think a lot depends, and Earl and several of us discussed this, just what will be the reaction of the media. Well, we cannot predict that. Earl mentioned that perhaps it may get as far as Dayton newspapers or the Cincinnati Columbus paper, maybe Ohio, and that'll be about it. I really don't know how they'll react. If there is a reaction to what we present, relay, and it does make AP, UP, CBS, ABC, and NBC, I think it will reach proportions of a saucer Watergate. I think there'll be senatorial investigations, because they're going to have to disprove what I'm saying. My only weakness, and I admit this, I confess this in my papers, that I have no affidavits to support the information I have. In most cases, I cannot use names because of sensitivity to material, which is understandable. This then can be construed by the major media as having a weak case. Then it would depend entirely on how reliable I am. And hopefully I have been able to establish to some degree some credibility in my 28 years of research. Now, again, it'll be a major test, it'll be of major interest to me and everyone, I believe, is the reaction of the media. I can anticipate the reaction of general researchers in the field, and the general public I wouldn't dare predict, but I think first of all, we have to run over, we as researchers, and we do number in many thousands now. If we can get things moving there, that's at least something in my favor. But again, it's still, we have not convinced the nation. We're only talking amongst ourselves. This is what we've been doing for years. Researchers are talking to researchers. What I'm trying to do is get to the public, the masses, the media. If I can accomplish that, something's going to have to give. So it's going to be a good test. I don't know how to predict it. I could get shot down and suffer character assassination in the works. And I'm willing to go forward, I'll say here and now, it's 2 months away, and stand that risk. Because I believe what I say. I know the information I got is from, as far as I'm concerned, unimpeachable sources. Rather than go on again, let's say I scrapped my talk that I would normally make. I'm just talking since the beginning here, right off the top of the head, with no really prepared notes. Because I feel very sincere in what I'm saying. And I think without further ado, not going into the life orders of research and many theories, UFO sightings, close encounters, and all those interesting things, I'm going to throw the meeting over to questions and answers, and hopefully I'll try to answer them as honestly as possible, realizing, of course, that there's a lot of information that I cannot relate to you, that, of course, that which is enclosed in my contents of my paper, and that's my choice because I have to keep that information confidential because I told the informants that it would not be revealed prior to that, and also gave instructions to all handlers to please abide by my wishes. And of course, I cannot talk about other data that I may use as addenda. So at this point, I'll take a little drink of water and we'll throw it open to questions, hopefully answers.
I'm wondering if in your discourse throughout the times, with whatever degree, with the news media, are you experiencing, or do you sense, a hidden, subversive fear within the operators of the media? Operators in the sense of the underlings, those who are not in control, who are doing as they are told. Do you sense a hidden fear that they must acquiesce, they must kowtow, they must work within the defined framework as declared to them?
Yes, sir. They do what they're told to do. They're given an assignment, In fact, it's very conceivable that NBC, the major national network program, they may have a man there representing NBC, but it might be just for the local station. But the real test will come if you see any segment of this art performance on a national network. Certainly it's as interesting as some of the other news items they have on the, after all, this is rather earth-shaking what I'm trying to relate. If they do not use it, it points out something to me, yes, but I would say the people aside, the hirelings, the little man, the field man, cameraman, he doesn't really have any choice. He may go back with a beautiful story and completely believe it, but it's his boss who makes the decision. And he is back not necessarily in Columbus or Dayton or Cleveland offices, but he is in Washington or New York. He decides what goes on there and whether it's fit for the nation to think about. And the same thing's true of UPAP. There's no question that a local paper in Dayton, Cincinnati, Zanesville, Indianapolis, Columbus, and so forth, may pick it up and write a little cute story about it. Either they'll treat it sort of objectively with a, straight story, or they'll have some fun with it. They'll refer to them, of course, as green men. But in the cases I'm aware of, none of these characters, these beings, were described as green. And so the answer, yes, I would say that the local man will really have no say. The reporter could be very objective and extremely interested and highly impressed, but it doesn't mean he can go back and control the newspaper. We've seen too much of this control through the years, and I'm aware of it. Going back 28 years, that the press has, at the newswire level, top levels, has been working in coordination with the top agencies in the United States in this regard. Otherwise, we'd have had the stories on the little man a long time ago. And it wouldn't have been called green men.
Are any of these officers the government have, are they still living? That they got from the crash?
No, I find it easier dealing with the dead ones. These were all...
There was rumors that they had some living ones that kept alive. I remember hearing on the radio one time, one investigator, I couldn't remember his name, that they took one off him into a psychiatric hospital or something.
I've heard the rumors, too, through the years, and I truly cannot substantiate that. There is some suspicion of mine based on a few reports that I may have one in a living state. I cannot prove that. That I must relegate to the rumor stage. But I'm referring now to those who are deceased, and those I know they have.
All these saucers you have, or UFOs, are they all seem to be made the same type, or are they different type?
With variation.
Variation. What about the occupants? Are they thinking the same? Are they the same type of beings, or different?
I can only answer that limitedly right now, but they're generally size, height, 3.5 to 4.5 feet, and generally described similarly, with a few features here and there a little askew from the other.
I know of your recent involvement in connection with the United Nations and trying to get their involvement, and particularly your involvement with the political runaround of the different ambassadors and government representatives in one sort or another. You mentioned this evening that there were quite a few possible crashes in the United States, not counting the overseas incident. What I'm interested in is, with your contact with government representatives there at the UN in particular, what involvement is there with these various other countries? How are they able to keep this super secret?
They work in many instances cooperatively with the United States and have the same suppression system there as we have here. They all have their equivalent to the CIA. And many of them are connected with us through NATO. Of course, we work cooperatively there. We have very close and had close links with England, Australia, New Zealand, and other countries who depend on us for our technology and wherewithal to do proper research, and it's only to their good to work in concerted action in this area. in reference to my work at the United Nations for 1 week last winter, I was asked by the Prime Minister of Grenada to work with his ambassadors in presenting, hopefully, at the United Nations 32nd Assembly to introduce a committee, a working group within the United Nations, and I gave my full support of that. This was known to the United States government, and I even advised them on the approach to the at the United Nations. And I sat in on all the meetings at the UN. I was responsible for all the foreign delegates. I knew what was going on sort of behind the scenes. I was realized the United States put much pressure. I was right there when they called. A commander in the Coast Guard was on the phone at least twice in the morning while I was sitting with the ambassador. And some of their comments, pressure was on heavy. They even referred to Grenada, its position as far as human rights in the world. There was not too much cooperation, why they could always refer to their human rights stand. This is a good wedge, a good weapon used against nations if they don't behave according to the way we like. This has been Carter's approach, What about human rights in South Africa, human rights here and there? And the same thing, the same tourniquet was applied to Grenada, because there was intelligence information that I was aware of that they were planning hanky-panky with Chile, which was communist. I was with the Prime Minister. I was invited by the Prime Minister to sit in with during his news conference when he was grilled by 2 reporters on this matter. And he emphatically denied that. He says Grenada, its people are a highly religious people. They have no communist affiliations, regardless of what the United States may charge. I could see through the whole thing because what they were doing was planning to work on a very delicate subject, UFO. And this was not the time, according to the U.S. plan, to talk about the UFO in the 33rd, 32nd Assembly of the United Nations. So we agreed to modify the text of our points, and hopefully we'll come back to the 33rd Assembly in September of the coming year and do it all over again. And on this note, a week and a half ago, since the title of my papers had become known publicly, nationally, and a word like that gets around pretty fast, believe me. I got a call from the ambassador of Grenada who advised me that the Prime Minister, Sir Eric Gary, will be in New York for 4 days, and would I please be able to find a way to get to New York and have a private meeting with him. I had to decline because at that time my mother was in the hospital seriously ill. I had no alternative but to be there and be with her, so I told the ambassador that my circumstances, that I could not make it. I regretted it, perhaps another time. But I knew what the Prime Minister was concerned about was the title of my paper, and he may want to use that once the paper is disclosed in the 33rd Assembly, which he would be entitled to, but by that time it would be public knowledge. However, what I will not give to the Prime Minister is the additional data that I'm aware of, which is even more sensitive.
Yes, Mr. Stringfield. Bob Oldreeve, I guess everybody, a lot of the people here know I with NASA. I've told them many times that NASA keeps few secrets, in that the information that they've sought officially has been widely disseminated. But you've suggested that there are 6, maybe 7, and I didn't count how many of these retrievals, but even more than one makes me ask the question that I think you could give some hint about at this time, and that is were these retrievals made at several disparate places across the country and different groups of Air Force personnel involved with each of the retrievals. In other words, you might have a team of 10 or 20 involved in as many as 7 retrievals. You have at least 150 people would be aware of a first-hand sighting and confrontation, that have to abide by all the security regulations over a large period of time.
Right.
Could you enlighten?
Well, we maintained the Manhattan Project with several thousand people, and we were very successful in keeping the main bit of information concerning that project away from the public when there were many enemy areas listening in. And I think we were very successful there. There were thousands of people involved in the development of the atomic bomb. It's not quite that difficult to maintain around 1,000 people involved with top security, especially when they all have to sign letters, practically signing their life away if they were to reveal it. And this is not too bad.
Well, okay. Part of the question I'm interested in is if you have talked to informants, and through these informants, could you get an idea of how many people might be involved, or how many groups of investigators might be involved?
Well, yes.
If you're going to hone in either now.
I would not have access to the total information or something like that, because I'm just lucky what I got. That I wouldn't know the exact contingent or the people involved, whether involved a colonel, man involving the squad, of security police officers or whatever team they were. This is rather difficult to answer because actually I would not be in a position to really know the number. But I suppose the logistics involved in a retrieval would require a number of people with some good muscles and some good machinery to get it in there. And I could say that to be done. I'm guessing, but probably involving all the retrievals. Since retrievals began, would probably not exceed over 1,000 people. Now, technical people in the medical area, or specialists in metallurgy, whatever, people of that kind would be. These people could be worked with pretty reasonably and would maintain a secret. Now, your looser tongues would come amongst those who were doing the brawn work, heavy work, truck drivers, the what have you type. There again, these people are available who would be very willing to keep that secret, and it doesn't exceed 1,000 or so. I would admit that if you got involved with 50,000 people, it would be pretty difficult to maintain a secret. Even with that 1,000 or slightly more involved, I have been able to get information from 27 of them. Limited information.
Well,
not the entire.
That's what I was suggesting, that in talking to 27 people, you could
this is only recently.
The direction it might go to me, and 1,000 might be in its span. So I was interested in that. Whether it was an elite cadre that ships here and there and everywhere to do this.
Comment on that too. I do believe that we have the elite cadre too. Specialized in this type of work, who move with moment's notice to any area where there's a retrieval necessary.
But there would be a
highly
lot of
trained,
people locally
secret.
that would be involved.
Yeah. Yes, this is a reasonable assumption.
Of these retrievals, are we to assume that most of these are shot down, or half of them are mechanical failures, or what is it?
That's a question that I have. No one has been able to clarify that to me. I'm assuming that these were due from malfunction. I have truthfully no knowledge, and I could be wrong, no knowledge of any crashed UFO to be a result of our firing missiles or whatever happened. I'm assuming, therefore, that these were malfunctions for one reason or another, which to me indicates that the real UFO is not an imperfect machine. I have wondered for many years in my research that the UFOs could make no mistakes. Therefore, they must be from another dimension or whatever. They just don't make mistakes. But now I realize that they do have a human quality.
Oh, but these are all basically what we call little scout ships, though, that we're talking about.
Basically,
big
yes.
motherships.
Right, that is correct.
So these may be come into our realm intentionally just to provide us a little.
Well, I don't think they would. I don't think that. Well, I doubt that intentional crashes, because in some instances we're aware of the fact that some of the bodies were charred, pretty well burned.
You know, I can understand the secrecy behind the Manhattan Project, but I don't think that I understand the secrecy behind an international security of the downed craft and their occupants. Could you speculate or enlighten us in that direction?
Larry, that's one of the questions that I have too, because I'm aware of a crash in England, and of course the famous Pittsburgh case, several in South America, one possibly in Australia and elsewhere. And there again, we do have our operatives, foreign countries who are able to get there and offer assistance. And we have held over the many years a certain amount of power in the world if a small nation may consult us, knowing that we do have a technical setup for researching this area that they consult. And those who do not really care to parlay with us, cooperate, can always, through our secret operatives, relate to certain areas of economy. We can always use that as a means of helping their economy or otherwise, especially with small nations. There are all sorts of ways and means, diplomatically and politically and economically, that we can deal with a nation who may want to be recalcitrant in a very sensitive area. However, on the other hand, too, looking at it this way, there's all sorts of ways of looking at that, because the United States has so much technology, especially in the West. We do a lot of testing. These could be the areas most sensitive, because this would be the area they would like to know what we're doing and keep us under heavy surveillance. I am aware of the fact, too, that some of our most significant close encounters and landings have occurred on military installations, nuclear installations, and missile sites in the United States and in foreign countries. So if there is curiosity in these areas, therefore there would be a preponderance of UFOs also in these areas, and also thereby a greater chance for a crash instance in each of these sensitive areas. I cannot give a positive answer, but this is generally speaking on the how, or the wherewithal of operating.
More directly, I was interested in why the need for this security.
Security? Oh. Well, why is there secrecy?
Right.
That's many answers to that one. One, the old throwback when the CIA believed that there would be a cultural shock back in the 50s, and therefore the public was not prepared for this sort of thing, therefore say nothing, deny everything. Let's create an atmosphere, resolve the Robertson panel to say nothing, no matter what means we need to keep the information down, do it. And that would, of course, the idea of the fear of a cultural shock, or psychological panic, or philosophical panic, or whatever. That's the old popular reason for suppression of such information, which could have been applicable through the years. There's another aspect too, and I'd like to speculate here, that if we've had these retrievals of the craft going back as far as 48, early 50s, we certainly would expect our government not to go to sleep with the switch, and there would therefore be some attempt to duplicate some of the items in there to whatever degree. And if there were duplications of such pieces of equipment or the craft itself, why naturally that would be kept secret, in fact top secret. And that would be another reason why there would be secrecy, and certainly a valid one. Because if we are, as long as we work in competition with Russia, so to speak, and China, why, if they are also gathering information, it becomes sort of a contest in that area. So that would be a very valid reason for keeping information. It's also possible that they have a lot of information concerning about the craft, some idea where they're from, being extraterrestrial. They don't know the intent. And if they don't know the intent, they announced to the public that they knew about the craft to some degree, that they exist, and a little bit of information about that. And yes, they were extraterrestrial. But when the press pressed in for information, why are they here, and they couldn't answer it, then this would then create an atmosphere of even more fear in the public mind. So that would be a good reason. So you got all these reasons why there would be secrecy, or take all of them, put them together. So I believe the National Security Council and Council on Religion would make decisions in this area to consider all those viewpoints in making a decision for secrecy. Until, of course, as it's building up now, I think there's a realization at this point that they cannot do it any longer, and I think they are working on ways and means to bring the public into their confidence. And we may see more of this before the year is out.
Mr. Springfield, how do these people sleep at night since they're such in need of secret stuff that they're so privileged to know, but yet everyone else is seeing it, but they don't. They just know it exists. How do they sleep at night? They have to live with all this.
You mean the people with the secret?
Right, the people that are sitting back that know this, and they know this is going on. How do they sleep?
That's why I can't sleep at nights anymore.
I mean, I know I've seen something. I know how it feels. How would all these people?
Well, I think that could be.
That's the reason I still sung that.
Yes, that's probably has affected some people. But if you take a hard military man, for example, those who have been in combat, seen death and all that sort of thing, that is able to develop a sort of a callous attitude toward whatever it is. In other words, you have to go out and face death during a war, and you build up a certain amount of immunity to that sort of thing, and you can take it.
Even if it's something so dramatic, something so different than what...
Well, I since I've learned quite a bit here recently, I have felt a little nervous about it, even though I thought I knew the answers all my life, for the last 28 years. But as I mentioned here at the table here just the last hour, I feel uneasy and nervous with it, and true.
Well, would you care to comment about the gender of the PTs, as you know it? Or is that still?
Yeah, that still is.
Sorry, I asked it.
No, it's a good question, because I'm trying to learn a little bit more there too, and what I have is really not too much. I mean, to comment on it, I'm trying to get this from a couple of sources myself.
He said gender, so we know right there.
Yeah, we're assuming, unless they're all clones, that they have the same organs that we do.
There seems to be a division of interest. The psyche, the pure UFO, and Bigfoot, and possibly one or two trailing off interests. Now, it just seems that the Great White Father government is only interested in the hardware. They're not interested in these valid enough reports of Bigfoot.
Well, I agree. We do have valid reports of Bigfoot. I don't know the relationship, the real relationship between Bigfoot and UFO, although we admittedly have information that seems to put the two together, align the two. In some way, we have UFO sightings in the same approximate area of Bigfoot, but we really don't have any, to my knowledge at least, in Ted Glosier's catalogs, 1,800 cases where Bigfoot was seen either leaving a UFO or boarding one, whereas we do have a little character seen to do these various things. Unless Bigfoot has been designed by them to come here to do a certain thing and to make himself known in all the cities. See, at one time Bigfoot was known only up in northern Canada and the Northwest, Sasquatch. And here in the last 15 years, Bigfoot has suddenly become ubiquitous. I mean, he's Pennsylvania and all over the place. He's in Ohio, he's in Oklahoma, he's everywhere. And that's pretty hard to account for why he became so omnipresent everywhere from his little corner up in the Northwest. And I cannot account for that. Unless this being has been developed, or they had a counterpart to it, or took it and developed it for some reason. This is strictly speculation. And then threw him all over the United States to do his thing, whatever that may be. But I don't know what he's doing. Or when he's ever observed, he retreats. He doesn't really do anything. He's not hostile.
Would you be at all amenable to a guess that Bigfoot is indeed genetic manipulation, genetic experimentation, genetic engineering on the part of the intelligences?
Yeah, I would say this. See, I have no information to support it.
This would supplant a misconceived idea of certain interested parties in our level that could these hairy creatures be the pilots of these craft?
I don't think the pilots.
This is the inference.
No, I think the pilots of the craft are the entities that I had described in my, as occupants in my, which I'm describing in our paper. The Bigfoot, if he is a part UFO, would be merely a byproduct of it, would be used for certain reasons, perhaps for testing purposes of some kind, for surveillance purposes that we wouldn't understand. That is, if that's what the case may be. But I think we have to go back to the old Indian stories of Sasquatch. The same thing's true of Yeti and the Himalayas. We don't have the old Sasquatch settled yet. He may be a throwback of man. We don't know. Maybe a primitive type who's been very elusive. However, the reports, especially those from Pennsylvania, indicate, Stan Gordon's research, that there could be something psychic about the Bigfoot's appearance. It does have lesser toes, I believe. Am I correct? In the Sasquatch, one less toe. Am I correct? But anyway, these are observed with large, glaring eyes and behave a little differently than the earlier Sasquatch type. And frankly, I don't know how to really account for that. I mean, it has not been a part of my research as far as the retrieved UFOs from the occupants. There's no affinity, to my knowledge, with the Bigfoot.
Do you agree with Dr. Heineck so far as the mutilations are concerned? He feels they have nothing whatsoever to do with any craft or occupants.
That's Dr. Heineck's feeling. We can respect his feeling in that matter. But there were alerts, by various states in the West because of the intensity of this.
I know.
And then so much of it was suppressed, logically enough. I mean, certainly not the type of thing that you want to read about in the papers every day. But again, this is mysterious as the Bigfoot. We have the mutilation cases, again, sometimes in association with UFOs and the so-called mystery helicopters. And there we have no more positive information, nor can we make any conclusion. And I think the case must rest there until there is more conclusive information. I certainly do not have it in that area. I'm very interested.
Are you aware of any duplications of any of the down crash? UFOs firing on?
No, I can't comment on that.
Yeah, again, I'm trying to find areas where I think you could, if you don't wish to expand upon here with us, you'll be expected to expand upon in July.
Right.
And I'm trying to think of what types of questions you ought to be able to comment in my mind as a result of having talked to 26 people
Right.
who are in some way associated with these retrievals. If, and one direction, as I suggested, you could be expected to go would be to find out who they knew, how big a group they were working with, and how many areas or what Air Force bases were involved in any of the investigations. And I'm not expecting any further answers in that regard, but I think I would expect that in July from you to establish credibility. Maybe not. Air Force Base is a pretty big place. You're not really tying anybody down very tightly as to who people were who were talking to you. But another way to look at the question then would be not just how many people were involved in the project, but in the area of establishing the credibility of the people who are talking to you in your mind. To do that, I think your biggest problem, I would guess, would be as to whether some individual were involved in some retrieval project that were highly classified that he guessed was associated with the UFO, but he didn't really know. People were very impressionable. I worked for a top secret place. I came this close to a top secret project, and it's pretty tough. You had to establish in your own mind that the people hadn't misconstrued what they were involved with and doing. That's my comment on that. The other end of the picture is you have to get this craft someplace and deposit it. This is very difficult.
No.
It can be done.
I know that better than anyone.
So in those two areas.
I do have the names of places where certain things have occurred, where the objects have been taken, and in fact where they ended up, staging area, what was done, what was seen in that particular area, where they were sent for, in some instances, for further research medically. In many instances where a specialist was sent in to check the metals involved as a specialist. Certainly, a man with that within close proximity of a retrieved UFO would know whether he was working on a crashed airplane or a disc. And when a description of the UFO is given, its precise size, the position of the hatches and the interior, with supporting photographs of the works, which I have, is good enough for me. Now, again, the weakness that I have is not being able to use his name, but again, the weight of my case is in the preponderance of material. If I were to come out with 3 or 4 cases, it wouldn't be quite as strong, but hopefully, not being able to use the names in most of the better incidents, it's understandable. They'll have to go along with this. To breach a promise there would be something I wouldn't do whether I got my name smeared or not, because I think what I'm doing at this stage is something no one else has ever attempted to do. And I feel like doing this much is the beginning. And there's always a possibility that at a later date, maybe a month after that, 2 months, fall, I will present a second paper to certain channels with additional information, and perhaps with even the names. Because I tell you this, I feel as though the climate is changing, and that there may be more revealed in due course, and perhaps I might be in a position to reveal some of it.
Stringfield, in the last couple of years, I've read twice at least 2 gentlemen in France that allegedly were able to duplicate the propulsion theory of the saucers. Is there any credence to that at all in your experience?
Can you name the 2 French gentlemen? I think I know who you mean. I've met them. I've talked with them. They expounded their theories in this regard at a conference in Chicago, conducted by Dr. Heine, sort of a closed-door meeting. I was privileged to attend that. I listened to the complete discourse in this area, which to me was very intriguing. However, I'm not a physicist, and nor would I understand that their suggestions or ideas were sound or otherwise. Certainly sounded good to me. But I would not be in a position to criticize their theories. And certainly what they had posed, at least, was seemingly understood by those in the qualified area. It looked good to them. People in a position, as physicists, to consider their matter, papers, looked good. And that's about all I can say. But I'm aware of these 2 gentlemen who presented papers.
In regard to the ETs, do you have much evidence of a medical examination and all of the fact that they maybe have the same type of flesh and blood that we have? And so anything that...
I'm aware of certain details of the general configuration and certain facial appearance of the of the being. At this time, I can reveal nothing medically about the beings. Maybe sometime in the future. But right now, what little I know, I prefer not to mention, and the possibility of learning more. This is a very vital area to me, and but what little I know, I'd better not reveal. But I do have a drawing here that I have made. It's a composite of the. I can't let you have this for duplication at this time, but this is a composite of the facial features of the entity, generally speaking, with a little give and take here and there. And I think I might be in a position to comment on that in about 2 more months.
Am I allowed to ask you one question? The way they breathe like we do.
That I don't know.
As far as you know. Okay.
That I don't know. I could stand here and conjecture on a lot of things on what little I know. And my guess would be guesses, and they could be completely wrong and erroneous, and therefore I'd be misleading. And I'd rather be reticent in these areas than come out and sensationalize. I think I've done that enough. I think I've sensationalized already by bringing up the subject without giving you any more details. But hopefully, in time, or at least by July 29th, I will have even more data to put in my roundup or the wind-up of the papers than I have now. I'm leaving this open, how I'm going to end mine.
Yeah, because the reason I asked you that is the one figure that I saw in the sign I had was I could see, like, where we normally would breathe for our mouth, I could see, the part right through here would be going back and forth like we were breathing somehow through here.
Where did you see that?
In my home.
Well, I don't think anyone really could at this time. We can only conjecture. Again, if the intelligence is so far advanced over us in so many ways, technically, they probably would also be advanced in the area of psychics. And having possession of that gift, they would probably be controlling our minds, letting us see what they wanted to see for whatever ulterior purposes they had in their minds, their thinking, their rationale, and could have mesmerized you or put you in a thought-controlled position where you were putting it together based on their control of your mind. If I made myself good. But my belief is that they do have the power to control the mind, because in most encounter cases they don't really talk. They don't talk control anyway. In the preponderance of cases that I've investigated, apart from what I know about the little dead creatures, but they don't talk. They don't verbalize. I've had descriptions given to me by people who have had contact or whatever you want to call it, close encounters, very close, with psychic effects of the whole works. And descriptions there would fall precisely in line with what you're relating. People will have effects where they see everything in mathematical equations for a week. They'll see the ocean in red, sky green, everything in opposites or in blocks or whatever. There's all these the phantasmagoria, the whole works.
All this is
in complete disarray and as a fantasy, and we cannot account for that, and I certainly can't. But these are cases that I'm sure that are being looked into hopefully by a Heinrich group someday. I hope that our scientists who say that we're dealing with something from another realm or whatever, that they can put some of this together and form a pattern so that we will know something someday, other than just talk about it all the time. I hope we can find a pattern for this stuff.
Yeah, but see, like when the sighting began, my home was being lit up. This was a half hour before I ever had the sighting. And my son came home, he went in the other room.
What did you see originally to start?
What did I see originally?
What triggered it?
I saw my home being lit up. I didn't take that serious. I thought it was an unusual storm. I was in the house. And as the light would come to the windows, it would be like a wide width. It'd come up. There wouldn't be any points. It'd come up to about that wide, at the top. It would light up 2/3 of the room, all the way through the hallway and all of the rooms. I didn't take it serious. I thought it was an unusual storm. So I began to walk around, where normally when I look at a book or something, I'll always cut the TV on while I'm doing it, not paying attention to it. But it wouldn't work. I didn't take it serious. my son came home when he was going to the drive-in. He says, Mom, I stayed for the one show, and I decided I wouldn't stay for that late show. I don't know why, but he did say it was unusually dark out that night. And I said, well, didn't you see the lightning light in the house? He says, no, I was at the drive-in. I didn't notice anything. So if he comes in, I said, well, get the radio, and we check to see about if even that one station has that crazy static on. We couldn't even get that. I couldn't be thrown the phone. I still didn't take it serious. But when he went to his room, I went to the door, and the lights were on the other side of the street. I opened the door. I started to look up, and it was there's like a street called Alexander, catty corner from where I was standing, and the second street light, the metal itself was white and glaring, and it lit up, not the bulb, but the metal. And I didn't take that serious, and there was like 2 blue globs or something, and they looked like I didn't even take them serious. And because I thought, well, all the electrical boxes they put up, it's nothing fancy. So I didn't take it serious, and all of a sudden it would like get light, you wouldn't see anything, it got dark again, there were 3 of them, catty corner from where I was standing across the street. I didn't take that serious, but then as I started to look at the screen, assuming all the street lights were coming on, because all of a sudden I see these great big circles right in line. I didn't see they were in line with the street. Then I thought, well, that's too perfect a situation. And as I started to turn back and unhook the top of the screen, that's when I saw the 9 solid disc. And just as I started to unhook the screen, more or less to go out and look, I didn't touch the screen because my picture went right next to it, like came to a glare. And normally when a car will drive up, you just unhook the door. As I started to reach the door, my screen began to disappear, and I didn't touch the door then because something stood in it real fast. It was like a lot of hands shutting a lot of windows with a lot of stringy red hair. And as they were shutting the window, they were shutting from the right to the left. Well, it would be like from here to here to me. And as this happened, I didn't believe what I was seeing, so I said, no way. And as I said that, it flipped off with a funny scraping like a car scraping a bush, and they had a buzzing sound like in unison, but they were going up and down all at one time in the same unison theory. And as I turned around, you could see like a reddish-orange light hit my closet door, and right where I was standing. And I said, and as I said, no way, and turned around, Michael from the other room said, I already put the radio away. And I said, I wasn't talking to you. And I thought, well, who do I think I was talking to? And then when I turned back, assuming it would be gone, there was like this black thing, like a pulsating water. I have to say that. It could have been black water or anything. It would look more like a seashore, all black. But it was like pulsating, like these things at the carnivals and stuff, you'd walk in, and like when I tried to look up, it was just like black glare, and I probably assumed it was sky. But there were like a lot of like yellowish type eyes in this thing. And I looked to the right, and there was some kind of a figure with appendages at the top, and it was standing with these funny things like this, and I'm looking at it. It had white in the eye part, in the slit, and I'm thinking, I don't understand, because about that time, it took a change. It looked like, you know how you see a cat purring and a body will move? It took like a body of a cat, but no head, just a funny look, and I thought, don't leave, I just want to know what this is about. And then as it did that, it went into this black that was pulsating here. And then all these eyes were in there, and I kept thinking, I don't understand, And then I just when the one eye would go, they would all go just like steps and blocks on a pyramid or something. All would go at one time, right in unison, and the one stayed the longest. And after that's when, it was like there was a projection of a plane and someone getting on with a briefcase, and they had a light, thin, it was a type suit that was hanging very fine, not like a knit, but like a nylon type thing, would hang flat. But there's one thing different. The plane ladder had no things where it was solid. It was hanging like a rope, but it didn't move. It was hard like a metal pole would be. And you saw the person projecting on it, and walking up on it. About that time, my son's name was mentioned, and it felt like a hit on my neck, just like you take your arm this far. And as I did that, I was standing back at the door, and then I said, how you see it and you don't believe it. So I said, Father, please let me see them again. As I said that, I saw that looked like the clouds opened up, and you saw one big metal disc with a smaller one, and there was a black line around the middle, but I only saw halfway with a black circle underneath it. And then after that, there was a very unusual lightning bolt. It looked like a Hercules thing on TV. And I thought, well, this thing goes down, boy, everything's really going to get, something will happen.
And what was your son?
He was in bed.
He heard nothing?
No, as far as I know, he didn't hear a thing, and I didn't even mention it to him, because I figured he's not going to believe this.
What interval did all this, what time lapse?
All started, he came home to the drive-in earlier and didn't stay as late as he should have, so it would have, the home was being left maybe, say, 12:30, 20 to 1. And at 10 after 1, I had the actual sighting.
AM, PM.
It was AM, 16th of July, 1976.